Bartenders of Reddit, what is the wildest conversation you overheard and never forgot? I was helping in the dining room when a man arrived carrying a large envelope. A woman joined him, placed her purse on the table, and went to the restroom. While she was gone, I brought them a complimentary spoonful of chilled watermelon soup and explained it to the man. When she returned, she ate it before he said anything. Less than a minute later, she rushed back to the restroom looking sick. When she came out, they began arguing while signing the papers from the envelope. She finally moved to the bar and told me they were meeting to finalize their divorce. She was allergic to watermelon, and her husband had watched her eat it without warning her. I understood immediately why those papers needed signatures. A man came in early for a blind date and told me a matchmaking service had arranged everything. He was nervous but polite, so I helped him choose a bottle of wine and a small cheese plate while he waited. His date was almost half an hour late. Then she stormed through the door and demanded to know why he had left her waiting outside. He explained that the reservation was inside the restaurant. She accused him of starting dinner without her and said this was already the worst date she had ever had. He listened quietly, poured himself another glass, and asked for the check. Then he thanked me, took the remaining wine, and left. She stared after him and asked whether he was coming back. I told her I sincerely hoped he was not. I once served a first date where the man brought a printed movie script. He explained that he was an actor and asked the woman to read the other character's lines so he could demonstrate his talent. She clearly did not want to do it, but he kept insisting that the scene would only take a minute. It lasted almost 20. Whenever she read a line, he stopped her to explain the emotion she was supposed to give him. Afterward, he spent the rest of the date reviewing his own performance, while she sat silently with both hands around her drink. When he finally went to the restroom, she asked for the check and a separate exit. We let her leave through the staff hallway. He returned and assumed she had gone outside to call her agent. One of my co-workers had recently married, but she was secretly seeing 2 other men. One evening, both men arrived at opposite sides of our horseshoe-shaped bar. Neither knew about the other. Each started quietly making plans with her for later that week. She kept walking back and forth, telling one that she was working late and telling the other that she had family plans. Then they began talking across the bar and discovered they both knew her husband. One of them was his regular fishing partner. My co-worker disappeared into the kitchen and refused to come back out. The 2 men finished their drinks together, compared messages on their phones, and left through the same door. Her husband arrived 10 minutes later to pick her up. Nobody behind the bar knew where to look. A married couple came in looking exhausted and ordered drinks without speaking. After the first round, the wife admitted she had been having an affair. The husband stared at the table for a long time, and then admitted he had also been cheating. For one strange moment, they almost seemed relieved. Then they began exchanging details, and realized they had both been seeing the same man. The argument that followed was not about the affairs. Each was furious that the other had apparently received better dates, more thoughtful gifts, and faster replies from him. They eventually called the man together and put the phone on speaker. He answered, heard both voices, and immediately hung up on. The couple paid their bill and left together, still arguing about which of them he had actually liked more. 2 women came to my bar with a large family group. Before everyone else arrived, they each ordered 2 quick drinks and told me they needed courage for an important announcement. Once the table was full, the conversation was cheerful for about 20 minutes. Then one of the women stood, held the other's hand, and told their families they were a couple. The entire table went silent. One older relative stood up and left. Another began crying. I stayed nearby, pretending to polish glasses while wondering whether I should prepare more drinks or call a taxi. Then the woman's younger brother raised his glass and said he had known for years because nobody takes that many weekend trips with a roommate. The tension broke, several people laughed, and the conversation slowly started again. I still remember how tightly those women held hands. A regular used to spend hours telling everyone that he was the unquestioned boss of his household. According to him, his wife never made a decision without asking permission, and his children became silent whenever he entered a room. One night, he was halfway through this speech when a car horn sounded outside. He stopped talking immediately, jumped off his stool, and knocked over his drink. He threw far too much cash onto the bar because he could not wait for change. As he hurried toward the door, the horn sounded again. A woman's voice shouted his full name from the parking lot. He ran outside so quickly that he left his jacket behind. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Then one of the other regulars lifted his glass and said it was inspiring to finally see the boss receive his orders. A couple spent an entire evening discussing a very detailed relationship agreement. They had printed more than 20 pages and were negotiating everything from household chores to how much time they could spend with friends. At first, I thought they were lawyers. Then they reached a section about what would happen if one person became more attractive than the other. They debated whether gym membership should count as a shared household expense and whether a new haircut required advance notice. They signed every page, finished their drinks, and left the document on the table. I ran outside to return it, but they were already gone. There was no contact information on the pages, only initials. We kept it behind the bar for a month. During quiet shifts, every employee read the agreement. A family chose the busiest Friday night of the year to stage a financial intervention for their adult daughter. They sat directly beside the service station while 3 rows of customers waited for drinks. Her parents explained that they had paid her rent, car payments, vacations, and credit cards for years. Starting the next morning, all of it would stop. The daughter began crying and asked how she was supposed to survive. Her father pointed out that she had a full-time job and earned more than the bartender standing 2 feet away. That bartender was me. The daughter looked at me as if I had personally caused the problem. Then she asked whether we were hiring. Her mother laughed, her father ordered another drink, and I suddenly became part of a family argument I had been trying very hard not to hear. A boy and a girl who looked about 12 came in for what was obviously their first dating. The boy's mother drove them and planned to sit at the bar so they could have their own table. The boy refused to let her leave. The young woman suggested that the 2 of them might have more fun alone. His mother agreed and tried to stand up, but he grabbed her hand and asked her to stay. For the next hour, his mother carried the entire conversation. She asked the girl about school, ordered their food, and even reminded her son to offer his date a French fry. At the end, the girl thanked the mother for a lovely evening and told the boy she would see him at school. He looked pleased. His mother looked as if she had just completed the most difficult date of her own life. A man on a first date suddenly announced that he and his childhood friend had invented a dance routine to an old pop song. His friend was not there, but that did not stop him. He performed his own part, then ran to the other side of the table and performed his friend's part. Whenever the chorus returned, he switched positions faster. His date asked him several times to sit down. He assumed she was worried about other customers and told her that real artists must ignore judgment. By the final chorus, half the room was watching. A few people even applauded. He bowed proudly and asked his date what she thought. She said the dance had answered every question she still had about him. He smiled because he thought that was a compliment. I overheard a man conducting what sounded like a job interview at the bar. The candidate complained about his current employer, insulted his manager, and explained several creative ways he avoided doing any actual work. The interviewer kept asking calm questions and taking notes. The candidate became more confident with every drink. Eventually, he admitted that he had lied on his resume because nobody verifies anything. When the candidate went to the restroom, the interviewer called someone and said there was no chance he would hire this man. The surprising part came when another customer at the far end of the bar walked over. He was the candidate's current manager and had heard the entire conversation. The candidate returned to find both men waiting for him. He had managed to lose his current job and his possible new one during the same drink. A woman brought her best friend to the bar after a breakup. The friend gave a long speech about self-respect, fresh beginnings, and never contacting the ex again. The woman nodded, deleted his number, and placed her phone face down on the bar. Less than a minute later, the phone rang. She had memorized the number and answered immediately. Her friend grabbed the phone and announced that the relationship was over. A confused male voice explained that he was their taxi driver and had found a wallet in his car. The friend apologized and returned the phone. Then the real ex called. Both women stared at the screen. After everything they had just said, they answered together and shouted the same rehearsed sentence. He paused and asked which one of them he was actually speaking to. One night, a customer noticed something dissolving at the bottom of a woman's drink while she was in the restroom. He quietly alerted us instead of confronting her date. We removed the glass, kept the woman away from the table, and called security. The man tried to leave through a side door while acting as if nothing unusual had happened. Security stopped him until the police arrived. The woman was shaken because she had trusted him enough to accept the invitation. She kept asking whether we were certain. I will never forget how normal he looked or how calmly he spoke. There was no dramatic villain, only a polite man in a clean shirt insisting that everyone had misunderstood him. Since that night, I have never considered watching customers' drinks to be an optional part of the job. Near closing time, an older couple sat at the end of the bar and discussed divorce in voices so calm that I assumed they were talking about someone else. They divided furniture, savings, holiday decorations, and even the photographs on their walls. Neither raised a voice. Then they reached the question of who would keep their dog. The conversation stopped completely. The woman began crying. The man moved his chair closer and held her hand. After several minutes, he suggested that they keep sharing the dog and meet at the same park every Sunday. She laughed and said that sounded suspiciously like a weekly date. He admitted that was the idea. They folded the papers, ordered dessert, and left together. I do not know whether they stayed married, but the dog may have saved the relationship.